watch and discuss the horrific, the obscure, and the flat-out strange from the other side of cinema. I am Mark Dickerson.
And I'm Jeremy Fink, and this is episode 8 of Cult Movie Cult, which is part 3 of 3 of our series So Bad It's Good, the best of the worst from the depths of cult cinema. Today, we're going to be discussing 2003's The Room.
Hi.
Can I help you?
Yeah, can I have a dozen red roses, please?
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you. Here you go.
That's me. How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
I bought some drugs off of him. Things got mixed up. I didn't mean for this to happen.
What kind of drugs do you take?
It's nothing like that.
What the hell is wrong with you?
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
You're lying. I never hit you. You are tearing me apart, Lisa.
You guys want to play some football? Johnny?
Ask Peter.
Come on, Peter.
No, I don't think so.
Please.
No.
Come on.
Nope.
Cheep, 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 cheep.
How was work today?
Oh, pretty good. We got a new client at the bank. We'll make a lot of money.
What client?
I cannot tell you. It's confidential.
Oh, come on. Why not?
No, I can't. Anyway, how is your sex life?
Your point of view is so different from mine.
I love him.
I don't believe it. You don't understand anything, man. Leave your stupid comments in your pocket.
It's not over. Everybody betrayed me. I fed up with this world.
How do you describe the indescribable? The Room is truly an experience, I would say more than a film. But to go into just a bit about, I guess to intro what The Room is, it is, as Jeremy mentioned, a 2003 independent film, marketed as a drama originally, but over time, with how melodramatic the film is and the cult status that it took on, it morphed into a comedy film. Unintentionally, of course, but there's lots to dissect about this film. There's baffling decisions that were made, from the script to the acting, to the editing,
To the promotion,
the filming itself,
to every step of the process.
Yeah. To the main person at the helm, who is Tommy Wiseau. Person, alien, whatever he is a beautiful human being.
Something.
He's something. So it was inspired by a lot of, I guess, personal things he was going through. He wrote it, actually I found it very interesting. He wrote it as a play in 2001 and even as a 500-page novel.
Which I wonder if that's floating around somewhere.
I would, yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who would really, really enjoy
either
of those.
To read it.
Yeah, either of those things.
Or even just to witness it, just to see what it looks, how it reads, or, I'd be fascinated.
Yeah.
But eventually he did make it as a film, which is The Room. And, to discuss the plot isn't as necessary as what I feel the story behind it is much more interesting, which is the focus of a book written by one of the main actors, Greg Sestero. He wrote the book is called The Disaster Artist, and they just made a film out of that, which I have not seen, but Jeremy has. Mm-hmm. So I'll kind of defer to you about that. Because you had just now, did you recently watch The Room, or had you seen The Room, or?
No. So I saw The Room for the first time. I want to say 2 months ago. So not super recently, but it's also, okay. I was pretty new to me. I watched it alone for the first time, which I would personally say is the best way to approach this movie. Is watching it alone.
Really?
I would say
okay.
I would say for the first time you watch it, watching it alone might be a good thing. And here's the reason why. Is we say that when we talk about this film, like you mentioned earlier, it's not just a film. I would almost call it a culture. There's a certain culture revolving around this, which we'll get to. And I mean, I haven't seen it in a theater yet. I need to. I live in New York City, and there's a midnight screening every weekend, literally every weekend. And I've been meaning to get to one, But I feel like it's one of those things where if you're seeing it with a group of people who have all seen it before and they're calling out the lines and, you know, I feel like it's something that is good to just experience and really let yourself be in for a while before you watch it around.
Yeah, I do understand that for sure. I guess almost every time I've watched it, it's been with people that haven't seen it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of get the best of both worlds with that. But yeah, I can totally understand that. It is something that, yeah, it's well, I think it is great to watch with other people as well, just to see the reactions on people's faces. And, and, you know, as I said, much of it is baffling. And I mean, what was your impression when you first saw it?
I mean, I thought, you know, obviously there were some funny parts, but I actually, this is a kind of a funny little story, but it struck me on a way more deeply personal level than I thought it would. So just to give a little background as to why, and this isn't saying that it's a deeply emotional movie, but basically what happened is, so I had just finished a few months ago, and I'm kind of in the process of waiting on festivals and everything, but I had just finished my first feature film, which is a very strange, surreal, like a surrealist film, and is definitely not everyone's cup of tea. I won't even pretend that it is. But so I showed it to my parents the night before I watched The Room, and you know, which on one hand I'm proud of this, but my parents were not super fond of my own movie, and they're both artists, so it was like, you know, very like straightforward critique. But you know, which is fine because I've also showed it to other people who totally love my movie, and you know, it's whatever. I hope some people hate it. But so I could kind of, though, watching The Room the next day, it kind of hit me in a way because I think that's every artist's fear, is that the thing that they're making is the worst thing that's ever been made. And so watching this movie, I started thinking about Tommy Wiseau, and here's this person who has made the thing that is actually the worst thing that has ever been made. So I don't know, like I guess the movie itself struck me because of all the you know, the craziness and strange plot or lack thereof in it, but like you said, it's a lot about what goes on behind this movie that I think makes it interesting.
Yeah, and I totally understand that as well, what you were saying about how you almost feel like a kinship with Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah,
because and also much like Plan 9 with Ed Wood, I mean, I feel a kinship with Ed Wood in certain ways because, I mean, both you and I are filmmakers, and we make films that, you know, as far as I can tell, we're kind of in the same boat where we make things that are maybe a little off kilter, or things that are personal, maybe not everyone's going to love, obviously, or be into, which is fine, as you said. I mean, that's part of what we do. So to see something go so off the rails and kind of take on a life of its own, you know, but like also wondering what the intention was of the filmmaker, and what were they trying to do, and thinking about those kind of things. I mean, that's always interesting to me. And Tommy Wiseau is a very interesting person. He's very mysterious. Not much is known about him.
He's from Louisiana.
Yeah.
Maybe from New Orleans.
Right. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, people don't even, yeah, exactly. Don't know really where
no one knows,
from. I mean, sometimes he just says, I'm a mannequin.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's a character in himself, and since he plays the main character in the film, that in itself is very interesting to me. You know, he's trying to do like an Orson Welles kind of, you know, he's obviously had very, very grandiose, you know, ambitions for this film. And one of my favorite, we talked about behind the scenes, you know, how there's lots of interesting things. And one of the most interesting things I found was that in the filming of this movie, he actually used 35 millimeter and digital at the same time, literally side by side. So,
which is unbelievably, if anyone who's not a filmmaker, that's unbelievably expensive. Like we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, to do that.
It is downright wasteful. I mean, it is just so the audacity, you know, someone who has that kind of money and just can come in and do that. I mean, that's just in itself legendary, I think. And there is actual footage on the DVD. I believe there's a short like montage of behind the scenes, and you can actually see him working and using this contraption he's built, where it has the film camera side by side with the digital camera. It's very interesting to me.
What's funny though is for the time that, you know, because we got to think, if it's released in 2003, they're probably shooting in 2002, 2001. I'm not exactly sure how long this took to edit. I would imagine a pretty long time.
Probably, yeah.
Probably because there was a lot of sorting to go. I mean, they had to watch, digital and film, but on some level, it's like this is the thing with this movie. For every impractical thing, you can almost see how there was a practical justification behind it until you learn why that. Because at the time, digital, shooting a feature film in digital was a really new idea. Like it wasn't something that was happening that often.
Yeah.
So you could understand someone having some hesitation, but if you could afford the film at that point, why wouldn't you just,
Well, apparently part of it was an experiment for him. He really did not understand the difference between film and digital, and he wanted to see it for himself. So it was, almost like an experiment. And I guess if you have that kind of money, you can do that. So he did, and they believe they ended up using. I saw some accounts where they used only the film.
I think that's they just used the film.
But I had heard before that they did actually use some digital for certain scenes.
It does look like film though when you watch it. It looks like film, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we alluded to this some mind-boggling things with. You said the editing probably took a while, and actually I read that there was a lot of stray plot lines and things that were left out of the movie, which is another reason that it seems so odd, and why characters kind of disappear and then reappear and
get breast cancer and never talk about it.
Get breast cancer, and, all kinds of stuff. So, and a lot of it happens in the room, in that one room, and on a rooftop in front of a green screen. Those are the two favorite locations in this film, and they're used over and over again. And I'm sure the green screen in itself was probably a huge waste of money. There's a lot of shooting they could have done on location, but Tommy opted to use green screen and shoot in studios for some reason.
Real Hollywood movie.
Yeah, he's making a Hollywood movie.
Yeah,
so.
real Hollywood movie.
Yeah. And also I find it funny, since he's the director and the writer and the star, I find it very humorous, like how much Johnny is such a great guy in the movie, because he plays Johnny, and he really makes himself out to be like the most saintly character in the world.
And this,
no one can
this might be a good
ever
time
say a bad thing about him.
Yeah, and this might be a good time just because it's one of those things. This is a movie that we could talk through the entire plot and it would spoil nothing.
Yes.
But just to give a little bit of plot background, because I think we kind of we're so excited to talk about all the craziness that was involved with the production, kind of jumped over. Basically, it centers around this guy named Johnny, who's in a relationship with a woman. I think they're engaged. Yeah, they're engaged. Named Lisa, and his future wife Lisa, and he has a best friend named Mark. And basically, Lisa is very unfaithful to him and with his best friend Mark. And Johnny is basically a saintly man who works at a bank and has a bunch of good ideas and does good things for the bank, but can't get any raises. He's pretty much and one thing that we had discussed before, Mark, is how I wanted to compare this to It's a Wonderful Life. It's just kind of like the psychotic, twisted version in a weird way, but it basically tells the story of the American guy who's just trying to make it and do it the right way with good morals and take care of his friends, but just can't seem to get things going. The life just gives him a hard time.
He's just trying to live the American dream. Yeah. But that's So sorry, you can keep going.
No, it's just to jump off that. Which is a very true, honest story, and a lot of the filmmakers, Tommy Wiseau really loved Elia Kazan. He really loved Marlon Brando. He really loved James Dean.
James Dean. Yeah.
These real American dramatic actors and directors. He probably was into Arthur Miller, I'm guessing. As a writer. Tennessee Williams
was a huge influence because I guess in acting school he used to do a lot of Tennessee Williams scenes that he would used to rehearse, I guess. So that kind of finds its way into this film and actually became part of the marketing at some point. I don't know how, but because I think it said on the poster, the room with the passion of Tennessee Williams.
Yeah, but we're not talking about a guy who lacked culture and lacked history. That's the interesting thing to me, is it's someone who knows film and dramatic history in a way that a lot of very good creators don't even seem to connect with. Yet for some reason he only seemed to take the melodramatic over the top elements from all those really wonderful artists and none of the subtlety.
Yeah, exactly. That's really funny. He had the influences, but what he did with them is wholly his own. I mean, that one famous line is, "You're tearing me apart, Lisa," which is very James Dean right there.
Yeah,
it's like Rebel Without a Cause kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that works its way into the film, but yeah, it has a different effect, I would say, than those films.
Yeah.
So as we talked about with Troll 2 and of course Plan 9, we have to talk about it with this film. The acting, I mean, the acting in this film, much as we touched on before, the characters, they were sometimes, they're responding to something that someone says and they're saying it, in a way that's entirely like they're just saying it from the script and not like they're responding to something else, kind of. And that happens a lot in this film. There's a couple lines that I just took note of, like when Lisa goes, "I like you very much, lover boy." Like she actually says it like that. It's very strange, and like lines like that, and of course the very famous "I did not hit her. I did not."
Well, all of Tommy's lines in this movie.
Yeah, every single one of his lines. Yeah, it could be its own.
It could be its own. Yeah.
But the way he always says, "Oh hi, Mark," or "Oh hi," he's always saying hi to someone. I did not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the very first line in the film, and it was funny because I watched it again, and I was like, wow. Even the first line, like when he comes in the door and he's just like, "Oh hi," he's just like, "Hi, babe." Like it's just like, it's just so strange,
Yeah.
And say what you will about him, but Tommy Wiseau, he's truly one of a kind.
He's an original.
He's definitely an original, much like Ed Wood that we talked about before.
Yeah. I think one thing we have to hit on is how this movie got made.
Yes.
Because
how did it get made?
So how did it get? So no one exactly knows because obviously filmmaking is an incredibly expensive endeavor. He
clearly had money though.
Yeah. So this was all self-funded by Tommy Wiseau, which is crazy because no one self-funds. You'll hear about someone self-funding a movie that they'll do for like $10,000 where they save up for 2 years from their job and are able to scrap together a little bit and make a little indie drama set in one room. Ironically, but but he dropped the estimate is somewhere between like $6 and $7 million when all was said and done. But no one really knows where his money came from, and there are guesses. Like I saw a video where someone theorized that he began by selling little plastic birds in Paris, and after he made enough money doing that, he moved to the States, and at which point he started some kind of clothing company that would buy wholesale clothing from Asia for nothing and turn around and sell it in San Francisco as like designer goods. But no one really knows. This is what's so interesting. It's all speculation.
Wasn't there also something where he basically was like schmoozing older women, like wealthy women, and trying to get like I don't know, something like I heard that touched on either in the book The Disaster Artist or the movie.
It's like
you've seen the movie, so I mean I don't know.
Yeah, well I don't know. It's like like Kill Bill. There's the Pai Mei character. I think it's Pai Mei, right? Is the old Japanese something.
I believe
like,
so.
Where basically, or like any like Western folklore character, where there's these characters that you see show up in story after story, and there's all kinds of urban legends about them, but no one really like knows the mythology, or it's almost like Tommy Wiseau is almost like a real life Chuck Norris. Like if you think if you think it might be true, it might be true, or someone has probably claimed that it's true. It's like
it's like he comes from nowhere, and he's very mysterious. No one really knows anything about him, and that's why it's so interesting. I mean, even though there's been a book written about him and a movie, I as far as what I can tell, you've seen the movie, and you still not, you're not sure where he's come from or much about him.
And I think that's the reason. I mean, the movie, this isn't spoiling anything, is told from the perspective of Greg Sestero, and I don't think you could make a movie from Tommy Wiseau's perspective, because I think it would be just like it would just be such a crazy, you know what I mean?
Even if he wrote it, it would still be
I think,
especially if he wrote it, actually.
I think The Room might be as close as we could get to an autobiographical picture. But there's something, the thing that struck me though is there is an emotional core. Like, I mean, it's funny, but I don't know. Can we spoil the ending? Is that okay? Is it okay to talk about?
I think it's safe.
I
Yeah,
think it's safe.
okay.
So basically, the movie concludes with this really, really wild, dramatic,
Quite a dramatic turn.
Quite a dramatic turn. Where our main character, I almost call him Tommy. Our main character Johnny commits a really intense suicide using a gun. Which I actually read an interesting theory that the gun came from what's his name? Who's the tough guy character? Chris R.
Chris R. Okay,
So this was an interesting connection I read actually, because there's a whole scene where there's a character named it's very hard to explain. It's going to sound convoluted, and I would say watch the movie and it'll make more sense, but it won't. But basically, there's a character named Denny who we're not exactly sure how old he is or what his relationship is.
Is he a child? What is he?
And is kind of sexually attracted to other characters, but is maybe too young. But he also has a drug problem and seems to have gotten in over his head with thug.
For one scene only. He only has a drug problem for one scene.
And seems to have gotten in over his head with this character named Chris R, who has a gun. And Johnny and the other characters disarm Chris R, and then I think get him arrested, right? Or it's never really followed up upon.
I think he says, like, we're taking him to the police or something.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, I read a fan theory that was actually a really important scene, and there were this whole subplot of Chris R and Denny. The whole point was actually to get Johnny the gun, which is really interesting. It's almost like a little Chekhov's gun thing, like you see it and it has to go off, which is I mean, once again we said, like, he probably knew Chekhov, like he probably had an awareness of it's just the way he used it was very bizarre.
And like as we mentioned, like, there's a lot of stray things from the script that fell to the wayside, either in the editing or before that. But that drug rooftop scene is I wanted to talk about that because that is, like, probably the most surreal scene in the movie. It comes out of nowhere. I mean, drugs are not even alluded to before or after that, I don't think.
No.
And the character of Chris R, who you mentioned, the kind of thug character, the drug dealer, he's not even in it other than that scene, and so it just comes out of nowhere.
And he gives a decent performance too.
Yeah,
of everyone in the movie. He's pretty intense.
Pretty intense. Yeah, things escalate quickly.
Yeah,
that scene, and it's also one of the funniest scenes in my opinion. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the gun does show up there, which I actually didn't really think about before.
No, but I think it's one of those things with this movie where if you really pick it apart, there probably makes more sense on some level, or at least kind of pieces together.
Yeah. Playing catch is them, like, bonding with each other.
They play a lot of football, but not really football. They just throw a football around in a very bizarre way.
Yeah, lots of throwing of footballs in this movie, dressed in tuxedos sometimes.
Yeah.
And also, there's just so much to unpack from this film.
So much.
It's the ending. I did want to talk about the ending a little bit because, as you said, it's pretty dramatic. I mean, it gets pretty dark there at the end, and that's what makes me think that this movie was originally supposed to be a drama.
Yeah.
There's nothing about that is funny, but
no,
it is, of course.
And it doesn't. I mean, it plays in a kind of funny way, but at the same time, like, you can't help but feel for this poor guy at the end of all of this.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. He's the best guy. Everyone loves him. Dogs love him.
Oh, hi, doggy.
Oh, hi, doggy. He's the favorite customer of every shop he goes into. But it just has this tragic ending. It's just I don't know. It's a wild ride. It really is.
It is a wild ride, yeah. And as we talked about with Troll 2, this movie as well, I've watched it with other people a lot. Had get-togethers where I'm like, we're watching The Room. It's just what's happening.
It's what's happening.
And when it starts, it's funny because every time, for the first 10 or so minutes, people really are not sure what to make of it because, it actually in the beginning it feels like a straight up, like, softcore porn almost.
Yeah. Oh,
especially, they have the smooth R&B music come in, and, like, there's a couple weird sex scenes.
Very graphic sex. Very graphic, but not graphic. Yeah.
Time.
Like, you know what it is? They go on for a very long time.
Like, uncomfortably long.
Yeah.
But the music is what makes it hilarious in my opinion, and also, like, the grunting and groaning. There's, like, odd moaning sounds that they dubbed in later, and I mean,
and Denny
of Denny watching them creepily, and all kinds of weird stuff going on. But yeah, showing it to other people is always really fun. Great movie to watch at a party or have on in the background or something like that. So I see what you're talking about, saying, you should probably watch it by yourself. But then quickly you should show it to other
Turn
people.
around. Yeah. Then go watch it with, I would agree.
Because everyone should see this movie, whether or not you're into film or not. I think everyone gets a kick out of it in some way.
Yeah.
Once it gets going and people start to realize, okay, there's something really off about this movie.
But it's interesting. I mean, I forget. There's some. I don't know if it was a film critic or a YouTube video I watched. I wish I wrote his name down. But someone referred to it as if an alien came to Earth and someone described to him what a movie was, but never actually showed this alien a movie, and then told the alien to go make a movie. This is maybe where we would end up. Like it's just so outlandish in ways that,
Well, actually, on that note, I have kind of a personal story related to this movie, believe it or not. And this was after I had seen it, and after I'd loved it, and because I've seen it multiple times now. It's one of those movies you can watch over and over. It's a true cult film for sure.
Absolutely.
But I was actually shooting a short film that I wrote with a friend of mine. We were in Manhattan shooting it. It was called Puppy Whistle, just a kind of bizarre short that I made. And one of the scenes takes place at a house party. One of the scenes takes place during a house party. So we were in my friend's apartment, and we invited a bunch of people over, a bunch of his friends, stuff like that came over, who lived in New York. And you're in New York, obviously, as people just show up. People are people that might be famous, whatever, like people just kind of are there. And at this one scene that we were shooting, I got to talking to one of the extras, and he was Scott Holmes, who plays Mike in the movie.
Really?
In the room.
Room.
Yes. So he just randomly showed up. I think he was in an improv class with somebody who was in the scene as well. Yeah. So I got to talking to him, and I talked to him for a while, and he just, he was very nice. He seemed extremely, excited and happy to talk about the room and about Tommy. He had lots of stories, and I just would just talk to him for like an hour. I think it just took an hour out of filming just to talk to him.
Yeah.
And in between takes and
That's
stuff,
amazing.
we were talking because we were both acting in it as well. And one of the stories he told me was at the premiere of the film, because I asked him, I said, Scott, was this is like the big question about The Room. Did Tommy know? Did Tommy know what he was doing? Was this a comedy? Was this a drama? So that's what I asked him. And he said, and he told me a story about the premiere when they were all sitting behind Tommy Wiseau. And after, or during the movie rather, the audience was laughing, as you would do when you watch this movie. And he was very confused. So he turned around to everyone and he said, "Why are they laughing?"
Yeah, right there in the theater. Wow.
And that, yeah. So that, and then, Scott said something like, "It's your comic timing, Tommy. Look, you're great. Look up on the screen. I mean, this is what, it's great." So that's what he told me. And that kind of puts it all in perspective for me, getting that kind of insider knowledge about it. So I think for sure, the terribleness of the film, I whether or not it's intentional, I'd say it probably was not.
But it was embraced. He embraced the fact that it was a comedy after the fact.
Yeah. And now like we said, he tours with it now. He shows the film all the time.
He still promotes it.
He still promotes it.
We're recording this now in late January, and a couple weeks ago, The Room, the James Franco won a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical, and for portraying Tommy Wiseau, and Tommy Wiseau was on the red carpet at the Golden Globes, and I saw a video, and one of the interviewers came up to him and started asking him questions, and he started promoting The Room. He didn't promote The Disaster Artist. He was pitching The Room. It was like still to this day. It's like,
yeah, I think he'll be promoting this movie for the rest
forever,
of his life, to be honest, because I think he actually started to make something else after this, but I don't know if it ever got completed. I think it was like a sitcom or something like that.
Well, apparently he made a documentary also called it's like Homeless in America, which apparently wasn't. I mean,
was that before or after this?
I think it was after, and I don't think it was bad from what I understand. I think it was just kind of, like a run-of-the-mill, like nothing special, but it was just like a solid documentary about homelessness, because I think if it was bad, we would all know about it now.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. Another interesting thing, though. It's like, Like it seems like this one project just kind of ran off the rails in some way, or
and he took it and ran with it. It seems like.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because even if you hear him talk about it, in real life, like there's a feature again on the DVD. There's like a because I'm like I have to hear what this guy says about the movie, and you watch like an interview with him where he's being asked questions, and every response is just mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
It's just baffling. All his responses, he's so cryptic, and it's so he's very interesting to watch. But and in the end, like we said, he's just always going to be a mystery. We don't know where he came from. We don't know anything about him, and maybe that's for the best. I mean, maybe that's what makes it so interesting. Really, in the end,
maybe he doesn't even know.
He doesn't even know exactly. Yeah. He's completely a character, and again, whether or not this film was intentionally a comedy or not, as I kind of, my opinion is that honestly, like, I don't think there's any way that anyone could make a film this deliberately bad, could deliberately make a creation such as The Room.
No, I think if you went to the greatest filmmaker on the planet and said, make something so crazy that is so anti-film. Like no one could. Yeah, I mean that's what it is. This is an anti-film.
No one could be
like no one could do. No one could do this trying to do this. There's not a chance.
And no one could be that in tune with like the zeitgeist. You know what I mean? No one could anticipate people's reactions to something like this. It's just, it's a case of the bad movie stars like aligning. You know what I mean? So many bad decisions had to be made.
Yeah. It almost feels like though to me in a weird way. It feels like if David Lynch had no talent. You know what I mean? Like if you took like a David Lynch movie with all of his weird idiosyncrasies that work so well because David Lynch is a genius and can carefully manipulate it, so you're kind of watching it not sure what's going on, but then all of a sudden you get hit with something emotionally or aesthetically that it just you're gripped with. It was like if someone who didn't have that extremely refined sense of mise-en-scène and character tried to make a David Lynch movie. It is like
an unintentional David Lynch.
An unintentional, yeah. Because it's like, like the characters will talk. They don't talk like human beings. They talk like, like if
like Tommy's brain, yeah.
Yeah, like if a non-human, like so we said earlier, like if a non-human tried to emulate a human being without ever having experienced what it is to be a human being. It's like
which some would say is what Tommy is kind of.
Yeah, a pirate, an alien, but he'd probably say he's James Dean reincarnate. So
exactly, and that's what I love about him, like the passion he has, And personally, like you mentioned before, we were saying like on a personal level as filmmakers, like we kind of understand, we kind of get where he's coming from,
Or any artist. I think any artist.
Any artist, yeah, exactly. Even if it's a disaster artist, I guess.
Yeah.
But this film, The Room, exemplifies for me like just how much can go wrong when you try to make a film.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like all the different factors that come into play and that need to meld together to make something work. I mean, this, so many things can go wrong, and this is a great example of that.
When they all go wrong.
When every single thing goes wrong, yes. So the fact that he has now taken it and is running with it and still promoting it to this,
making a lot of money. Like he's made the money back. For as much as he spent on it, he is now in the black.
Oh, he is a rock star for sure. Yeah.
15 years later.
Exactly, and I still have yet to go to one of these screenings. So when you go, please let me know.
Yeah, there's one tonight. If you want to make,
is it really?
Yeah, there is one. I mean, like I said, literally every weekend, the Room screens more than you'll go. I've been to midnight screenings of Taxi Driver. I've been to midnight screenings of The Shining, Pulp Fiction, every all the like the great midnight movies that people love. Mm-hmm. And I haven't been to a midnight screening of The Room yet, but like they sell out. Like I've been in the movie theater at the same time that a screening of The Room was going on, and here I am watching like Mulholland Drive with like 4 other people, and The Room has 75 people in the theater. It's unbelievable.
You could probably hear them hooting and hollering, and throwing spoons at the screen.
No, it's unbelievable the commitment that people have to this movie this many years later.
Truly a cult film. Truly. And I would love to go to a screening sometime. But do you have any what's your final take on The Room, and I guess why do you think it has such a lasting impression as a cult film?
Final take on The Room. I mean, I guess the thing that comes up for me that's been bouncing around my mind since I saw The Room is it a bad film? Is it a bad film or not? And the reason I bring that up is because it raises the question. It's almost like like the artist Duchamp, who put a toilet in a gallery, and at first everyone said, oh, this guy's an asshole. He's just putting he's putting a toilet in the middle of a gallery, and he's making fun of us all. But then we say, oh, there's something to that, because he's raising the question of, what is art? How do we define it? And I think it's hard to define a film that people 15 years later religiously love experiencing as a bad film. And they, I know The Room better. I know I spent more time theorizing about The Room than I've spent on movies that are critically acclaimed, important movies in the history of cinema. So I actually have a hard time saying this is so bad it's good. I think that the thing that the reason we say it's bad is because it's not what it was intended to be. But I have a hard time calling it bad because it's just so vibrant and original in a way that very few movies are.
There is something to it, yeah. And entertaining. I would say all three of these films we discussed are very highly entertaining.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah, so please, by all means, get your friends together, maybe have some alcohol involved, and
hang out in a
enjoy
room.
These films. Hang out in a room.
Hang out in a room.
And watch The Room. But yeah, I think that's probably all we can say about The Room right now. But
go see it.
Yeah, I go see it, and I guess check out. Well, I don't know. Should people check out The Disaster Artist?
Yeah, I like The Disaster. I was pretty fond of The Disaster Artist. I mean, like I said, it's good because you're kind of coming at it through that more neutral perspective. I would be curious to see a movie that is kind of more tries to understand Tommy, but I don't know if we can.
Can you ever truly understand?
You ever truly can. But I do think that there are some really interesting things in The Disaster Artist that anyone who loves films would enjoy. But especially if you are a filmmaker, definitely see The Disaster Artist. Absolutely worth your time.
I'm probably gonna check it out at some point. I probably have to because I've seen The Room so many times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, The Room itself, I definitely recommend watching that. I've watched it multiple times, and it's always a good time. So, all right. So that's gonna do it today for us. This has been the conclusion of our series, So Bad It's Good. And thank you once again for listening to Cult Movie Cult. You can find us on various forms of social media. And join us next time when we will be diving into our next film series, which is still in the works, but we're going to figure something out. And this has been Cult Movie Cult. And until next time, so long from the other side.